Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Sarah Flores. We're so excited to have you here for SF Doc Fest, which will be running from June 1st to June 11th, both online and at the fabulous Roxy Theater. We are joined today with filmmakers from the Shorts program Legends. The program will be featured online, which is how you're watching it. You already knew that, as well as at the Roxy on Saturday, June 3rd at 12 p.m. Please come join us if you can. I'm so excited to be joined today by the filmmakers who I'm going to have introduce themselves. We're going to start off with Brian. Hello, Brian.
Hello, hi Sarah. I'm Brian Favorite. I am the director and producer of Tony and Denise, cinematic memoir of Denise Deanne.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Up next, we're joined by Epo. Hi,
Yes.
welcome.
Thank you, Sarah. My name is Apu Bazidi. I'm the writer, director, producer of the Ruth Brinker story.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And hi, Antonio. Thank you for joining us.
Hola, we are Antonio and Gino. I am the director and producer of The Girl from 7th Avenue, Pat Cleveland, and The Runway Revolution.
Hi,
I
Gino.
am the assistant producer of The Girl from 7th Avenue, Pat Cleveland, and The Runway Revolution, and the editor and executive director of Antonio's Plaza Productions, alongside with Antonio.
Beautiful. What a wonderful group of films. I'm so glad to get to feature them together because I think they really speak a lot to kind of the legends of our past, folks that culturally enriched our lives in so many ways. So if I could just have each of you talk about the genesis of your film, how did you discover your subjects and how did you become involved with the project? And we'll go back to Brian. Brian, can you speak about Tony and Denise?
Sure. Wow. So this maybe I think is about 8 years ago that Denise Deanne, who is pioneer of so many things, environmental, union causes, trans rights, LGBT rights, women's rights. I met her through some mutual friends, and she was probably in her late mid 80s actually, and slowing down a lot, but still working very hard. And I was meeting with some of her friends. Sorry, I have a cat right here. And she, I think, in some way wanted to have a film done about her. To be honest, she had a memoir that she wrote and was trying to get it published. But it was after her passing that two of her friends who had been very close to her and taken care of her, we all kind of got together and said, let's have her dream come true and let's make a film. And so we scraped together literally some money, and I was able to put together maybe basically kind of a script idea off the memoir. And from there, the film, after 8 years, has finally been finished, and slowly but painfully and surely it came together. So it was pretty much on the will of her two good friends that wanted this film made, that and as well as me, to finally make this film happen. So
Well, I'm so glad to get to discover more. I had heard her name throughout the years in San Francisco, but it was just a really beautiful and loving portrait that felt very real and true to her experience. So thank you so much.
you're welcome.
Uh,
Glad it was chosen.
Apple, yes. Ruth Brinker. I mean, those of us who are in the Bay Area can't help but have been touched by Project Open Hand in some way. Even for me, working at Frameline for years, like I always worked with the folks just to help bring movies to the people that worked within the organization. But I never fully understood the truth, like the whole story behind it. So can you speak about how you became involved and the genesis of your project?
Yeah, and this project came in the middle of COVID, actually, 2020. Everyone is locked down at home, thinking about what it is, consuming a lot at home, eating a lot. Some of us were lucky to have family members, and a lot of people did not. And, elderly people in the community, people who didn't have any other people to reach out. So there was a question, is like, how do people actually survive in such times? And then, life just put me and executive producer of the film, which is the director of Project Open Hand today, we met at a restaurant during takeout food. We chatted, and then he's like, I'm the new president. I took over during the pandemic, and then we were delivering 5,000 meals a day with all these crazy atmosphere. And then for me, it's like always I focus on sense of community, belonging, and helping one another, because there are times we question a lot, especially in our society in the west part of the world. We tend to lose a lot of those things. So I was like, her legacy, that a woman that her gender did not matter, whether she was LGBTQ person or not. She was at age of 63, rolled up her sleeves and start delivering to food that people didn't want to touch, talk, because the fear, that epidemic, actually showed how our, the reason San Francisco Bay Area was also on top of their game, because they survived through a crazy epidemic and not a lot of people knew about it. And we wanted to show a simple act of kindness from somebody trying to heal and save lives. And that was the start of the journey. We talked with the current president of the Project Open Hand, and then they gave us lots of footage, historical archives that took us a year to go through, sort it out, and we put the film together and let her true legacy and true being a hero among ourselves. So we made the film.
That's so lovely. Thank you so much. Folks at home, I think we have a technical moment. I believe we lost Antonio. Gino, are you able to text Antonio and see if he's able to rejoin the Zoom? So we'd love to hear more from both of you about the girl from 7th Avenue, but I feel like, oh, here we go. Sorry to our viewers, it's live but recorded. So always an exciting moment. I believe Antonio will be joining us in just a moment. But Apo, thank you so much for sharing that. Obviously, San Francisco is a legend for its kind of leadership. Sorry, I'm hearing this.
Yeah, it's echoing.
I think it's coming from Antonio's.
Because
Everybody else, there we go. Okay, for its leadership in compassion care, even all the way back to the 80s with the beginning of the AIDS epidemic. And I think we're seeing that within the kind of similarities that we saw throughout COVID. So it's just really beautiful that you're able to highlight on your film. Thank you.
Project Open Hand touched a lot of people.
A lot of people.
I mean,
And
I've been around.
It was, yeah, and as a thought leader throughout the nation at how we could support folks that were living with HIV and AIDS. And so I really love how you make that comparison in your film.
absolutely.
It's beautiful. Hi, Antonio, you're back.
Hi, I'm back.
Just in
21st
time.
century problems.
You were hijacked by the spaceship from the future to take us through a magical journey through the history of fashion. I think that your film is incredibly interesting because you have this background in fashion. Can you talk about kind of how the genesis of the film, but also why you decided to frame it in the way you did and use your beautiful imagery?
Thank you. Yeah, I've been doing fashion for all my life. I have loved fashion and arts, and the regular misconception of fashion is that it's something very superfluous and frivolous, right? And there's so much more. And I wanted to tell the stories of the people who are in the fashion business, specifically the women who I think are overseen by the fashion industry. I mean, if we think about the models who embody the garments that the designers make, and sometimes I think they don't get enough credit, and fashion doesn't really get enough credit. and the contribution that has to pop culture, really. Like when you think about an era, you think about clothes. When you think about an artist, you think about fashion and the way it's a way of expression. So I wanted to tell this story, and I reached out to Pat Cleveland, who is considered to be the first Black supermodel, and her story of the struggle in the early 1970s. And her story is huge. So Gino and I just wanted to like focus in a period of time so we could tell the story in a short illustrated biopic. And the reason why we decided to do art is because we were in the middle of COVID, and I couldn't go to Pat's living room and interview her. So we were trying to figure out ways of doing it. So I'm an artist. Gino used to own an art gallery right there on Valencia Street. That's how we met. He used to sell my art. And so I tapped Gino, and we decided to do this illustrated biopic with moving tableaus. I didn't want to have like not to say anything wrong about Pixar or their style or Walt Disney, but I wanted to have something more like puppets from like the 19th century moving along. So it's 2,000 watercolors that I hadn't painted. Pat Cleveland narrated her story. She sings in the movie. Gino created a beautiful sound design, and it paid off. We have got a great response from the fashion world and also from film festivals, and we are so thankful to show in San Francisco. It's been really something great because Gino and I live here in the Bay Area, and we've been traveling all over the world with the film, but we were like wondering, when are we going to show in San Francisco? So we're really thankful for this opportunity.
Definitely.
I got you. Yes, we're so excited. I really love the inventive way that you present the story. I think it's just really fun. Gino, can you talk about how you came to be involved in the project and what that process was like for you?
Well, so it's a kind of multi-pronged answer. So I'm Gino Aviance from the House of Aviance. We are considered, I guess, a ballroom house. I've been in the House of Aviance since I was 17 years old. I'm in over 50, so it's been the major part of my life. So Antonio is also part of the House of Aviance, a newer member, but newer meaning almost 12 years ago, so it's still not new anymore. So there's that connection. The movie, Antonio and I have been working together for decades almost, in multiple levels. And then for about 3 years ago, I came on board more seriously during the pandemic as kind of helping him out and executive director of Antonio's Closet Productions. So we kind of solidified into a real team, even though for the last 20 years, we have loosely worked. We've danced together, we've done theater shows together, art shows together, capoeira, we've taught children together. He's hired me, I've hired him, and slowly it just kind of coalesced into something a lot more serious. That being said, this film itself, when Antonio and I went to the Patrick Kelly exhibit at the DeYoung Museum, we were debating what we were going to do. We had different ideas. And if you see the beginning of the movie, you're actually going to see a recreation of that show, but in the future, but it's rooted in reality. I think that's the night we shifted our attention from a larger group of people to Pat Cleveland herself. And we started talking about that. The movie also speaks about the first time Pat Cleveland or anybody ever vogued on a fashion runway. I come from a house that's very famous for voguing. So at the time, Beyonce was doing her song and it got really popular and sampled Kevin Aviance, one of my brothers. So I thought it was a very interesting time that we were working with some of the original people that ever did that who aren't getting any attention, while other groups of people that kind of just saw it happen and then just took things were making millions, if not billions of dollars off of that culture. So it wasn't on purpose, but all of a sudden we saw that happening. So the result is not only a movie, but we've also created a track. Thanks to Antonio and Pat, I was able to create a track that was released a few weeks ago called Legendary Runway, featuring Pat Cleveland. It's on Spotify, on YouTube, on everywhere. And it's one of the tracks that's in the movie. So I am blessed that Antonio brought me on board a few years ago, but especially with this movie, because it speaks to me in a different way that maybe he's into fashion. I come from ballroom culture. And so I was like, Antonio, this is incredible. What you're presenting to me is like, I have to be part of this. And so we're just getting started.
And Pat has been really instrumental. I have to say that, sometimes when you talk with with celebrities, it's very difficult. Pat was an open book from the beginning. Pat, the moment I reached out to her, she didn't know me, I didn't know her. It was just like all phone calls. We were in COVID. We just met last year. And also I wanted to say that April 15, 2023, I'm sorry, was declared Pat Cleveland's Day by Mayor London Breed. So Pat was really, really open to tell that story. She was instrumental in making this happen. I have to say that without her help or her support, we couldn't have done this alone.
Yeah, her energy has been exceptional. She's if you ever have the honor to be around her, you feel, some people have that energy that just shrouds you and makes you feel warm and comfortable. She has that quality. So I'm blessed to have met her. And we've worked with her many times already. We've spent like 3, 4, 5 days at a time over a few years. So we've really gotten to know her.
So awesome. Thank you both so much for sharing. I'm going to pivot back over to Brian. Your film is very unique in the way that you tell this story. Obviously, Denise is no longer with us, so you didn't have access to her, but your use of her archival makes you feel like you're there throughout the years with her as she's growing and transforming. Can you speak about how you got access to that material, how you decided to approach constructing your film?
I think it's a style that I've always been drawn towards, where it's just a bombardment of images. And I don't know if you feel that is what you saw. So I took her memoir, I broke it down into a script. I was hoping she would be able to voice it. Then she passed, and she had dementia too at the last couple of years of her life. So I found an actress, Kelly, her name is, and also knew Denise. And so she voiced the words. Then I laid those into a soundtrack, and then just got crazy and went out and found any source material I could find, mainly from the San Francisco History Archives. Had worked there as a volunteer at the museum there off of 18th Street for a while. And so they were very amazingly wonderful, and other films that I've done too there. And then I was scouring the internet and finding, as well, her actual film footage that she had in her collection of Super 8 films, a ton of photographs. I mean, it just all melted into this film. So I drew from every source I could find that could make sense to this film. There's a lot of it too that's just kind of random footage. Also too, I shot some things too on Super 8 that I had an old camera, and I found some actors, quote unquote, and staged a couple things. And I hope I made it look like it was actual old footage. And I found he's not an actor, but I found somebody who looked so much like Denise when she was Anthony Albanese, and was able to fill a couple spots with that actor portraying Tony as before Denise. And so that's it. All that came together. It was an editing extravaganza.
It's a juggernaut. It was gorgeous, and thank you so much for sharing, especially for all of our friends joining us at the Roxy. An untold history that we need to uncover is Denise's hand in helping keep the Roxy alive, for crazy weirdos like me to run around in my 20s and just sling popcorn and just have a good time there. So I just love being able to include this story. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sarah. Thank you. Wow.
Apo, wow, like what there in the Bay Area, like we've already said, you know so much about Project Open Hand, but like what was your process like just accessing the material that you used to tell this story? Like how did you get access to the footage?
Yeah,
Was it provided by the project or through
yeah.
the library?
I think just like, you know, me and my Brian share a lot of things in common. Same thing, you know, I've never met Ruth. You know, she was long past, but you know, when the project was kicking, we went to the basement of Project Open Hand. There was 200 boxes of VHS and photos, you know, lots of archivals of 40 years archive sitting in the basement. So we were like, here we come. But you know, like when you really align and you care about a project that you want to do, it seemed very overwhelming. But at the same time, literally every time I wanted to find something, it will just come out. Every time I ask whatever I was searching for, out of all those VHSs and photos, it will just beautifully pop up, as if, you know, the energy was handing it to us, being like, here it is, here it is. The hardest part was like, we didn't have any interview of her until we find a VHS tag that perfectly shot that one-on-one interview with Ruth. And she's telling, you know, like 80% of her life story. And that was like a big win for us. And that just gave us a structure of like what we were going to work with. And then after that, you know, we went to AIDS Foundation, we went to LGBTQ archives, bunch of outlets, New York Times, San Francisco Chronicle, anywhere we can reach and find material. So we collected, and KQED has done a lot of report on Project Open Hand. So we gather all that, and then we had to just put it together, you know, in a chronological way to honor her story and tell the story, you know, the best we can. And then there was, luckily, the biggest help was Fernando Castillo. He was a chef and worked with Ruth for 30 years. They were like buddies, and that helped us a lot. Fernando gave us so much insight, so much meaning to this project, and he literally held our hands and helped us to achieve this. So definitely, it was a beautiful project that came along with a lot of people's involvement and the energy. It was just meant to be, you know, taking place and happening.
It's so lovely. The power of archives, right? Like everybody
Yes.
go out and record the like legends in your lives or in your communities, because like having these resources to tell these stories are so important, which I feel like Antonio and Gino, you're doing with your film as well. You're the only ones that have the advantage of having a subject who is still with us to tell the story directly from their mouth.
And this is
which
not
is
the
so
first
cool.
time. Yeah, we've worked with a few other people, which in the future we'll talk about. But definitely, we want to honor the living. We think it's really important to make sure that there are people that have done really incredible things get to be known, or at least acknowledged in their lifetime. You know, and there's a lot of people, unsung heroes. So
That's lovely. Thank you. Antonio, can you talk about the visual style of your animation? Like it looks as if you're looking at kind of classic fashion design artwork. Can you talk about your approach to that?
Yeah, so my background is in fashion. I actually went to fashion school. But when I discovered that I wasn't so good at like making garments, I kind of like compensated by creating very complicated fashion illustrations. So what we see in the movie is fashion illustrations with steroids, you know, where I really, I've been painting for over 30 years. So it is watercolor, the medium that I use, but I treat it like oil. So that's why the colors are so vibrant. And I didn't use a lot of the technology that we have in the 21st century, like, because like I said before, I wanted to have a feeling we're representing an era where we were representing the 70s and early 80s. So I wanted to like stay true to what that was. I wanted to go back to, you know, the term couture is overused in fashion. It's something that is handmade. And actually, there's only like a handful of couture houses in the world. So I wanted to give it that couture feeling to the movie, handmade, if you will. So when you look at the movie closely, sometimes you can see like the pencil still there, or like when the water like didn't stay in the line and it crosses over a little bit. I wanted to have that feeling, graceful imperfection. That's what I was trying to achieve.
Also, I had to take his artwork, basically, of 2,000 plus pieces and make them move and interact with each other, which is different than the digital art I normally do, where I'm already creating things, elements and objects separate from each other. So what's really interesting, so Antonio created a lot of artwork already from his idea. But then when we were creating the storyboard, I could say, Antonio, I need a telephone. And within 24 hours, I would have a telephone. No, Antonio, it needs to be in a green background, or no, Antonio, you know. So as a graphic artist and as an editor / animator, it was an incredible experience to not only be working with someone's vision, but then to be able to have a vision that an artist creates and be able to put that together outside of the sound work that I did, you know. So that is, to me, another level, you know what I mean? To actually have somebody create watercolors for you, as a, you know, it's like having my own Mind Journey AI art creator, but as a human being. So that was just incredible. And if you really think of the amount of hand painted art and the amount of hours taken to make just 1 minute, you can imagine how much time he and I spent side by side.
And you're still friends. It's definitely harkens back to, you know, the first feature like animated film was a film called Prince Ahmed, which is essentially as a paper cut animation by a filmmaker who I think her name was Lottie Renninger, but don't quote me on that because it's been a while since film school. But it's a really, really beautiful kind of looking back at this classic form of animation, and the way that you made it feel so futuristic and so exciting. I think we're just about to wrap up. I think that's all the time that we have. Just in time
sorry,
for
guys.
Abba to rejoin us. Technology is our friend.
Technology is not our friend. Literally, I was like, out of all
I
those
had a
days-
rough start, so I was feeling a little, but now I feel much better.
Well, thank you so much to our audience for tuning in. If you're
Thank
watching
you.
this before June 3rd, you could have more hijinks with us live at the Roxy Theater at 12 p.m. Come see our faces in the flesh. But thank you so much to our filmmakers just for sharing these stories, for sharing your inventiveness, and bringing these to the screen. So excited to see them on the big screen at the theater. But either way, just so glad to know more about these stories.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, thank you, Sarah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes.